Number 9. Reindeer infected with anthrax. In 2016, Russian officials blamed an outbreak of anthrax in Siberia on the thawing carcass of a reindeer that was trapped in the ice 75 years ago. According to the World Health Organization, anthrax is a deadly bacterial disease that is caused by a rod-shaped gram-positive bacteria called Bacillus anthracis. 13 people reportedly died as a result of the deadly outbreak, which occurred after 1,200 reindeer all perished in the span of 1 month. Officials initially blamed the sudden deaths of the animals on a heat wave that hit the region, stating that the 95 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures likely weakened the reindeer. However, shortly after this announcement, it was confirmed that the cause of death was anthrax. Scientists studying the phenomena came to the conclusion that the deer consumed the thawed remains of another infected reindeer carcass that had apparently been frozen for many years. From then on, the anthrax infection was passed on to nomadic herders. But an alternate theory was also proposed by experts who say that the deer could have picked up the infection when they traveled through an abandoned cemetery located in Halmer. According to ancient tradition, the remains of deceased individuals would have been placed inside wooden boxes and set on the ground instead of being buried. The last theory would make sense, since the pathogen was not found in the soil samples taken from the area. But many people believe that the outbreak was likely caused by climate change, which is contributing to the rising temperatures in the Arctic Circle. Permafrost is thawing, and the ice is melting in many places, making it likely that anthrax infections could be a yearly occurrence during the summer months in Siberia. Animals and people alike have been buried underneath the permafrost for centuries, so it's possible that there could be bodies infected with extinct bacteria and viruses, frozen in time. Once all of that permafrost begins to thaw, who knows what kind of epidemics we could face. Number 8. A prehistoric caveman. In June of 2022, a prehistoric caveman was discovered in the Himalayas by 2 climbers from Sweden and Norway. The climbers were ascending the mountains when they were caught in the middle of a series of avalanches. In an attempt to escape danger, they entered a concealed tunnel on the side of the mountain. As they continued deeper into the cave, the adventurers came across what appeared to be the remains of a caveman from the Old Stone Age. He lived between 2.3 and 1.4 million years ago and must have been a prominent character in the Glacian-Pleistocene epoch. During that time, there weren't many Homo habilis roaming around the planet. Near the caveman's body, the climbers discovered a couple of crafted spears and what seemed to be blemished leather goods. The discovery surprised a lot of people, given that the bones were stored in pristine condition until they were found. The cave he was located in allowed for adequate coolness and humidity, which maintained the body in cryostasis, keeping it mostly undamaged. This was despite the fact that the caveman had been there since the prehistoric days. Unlike how it's depicted in similar themed movies, the corpse will not be moved anytime soon. However, the research this discovery lends to science is unprecedented, and we'll soon be able to understand more about frozen humanoids like this one that once inhabited the globe millions of years ago. Number 7. Grasshopper Glacier. In the early 1900s, a glacier full of tens of millions of grasshoppers was discovered in the Beartooth Mountains in Montana's Custer National Forest. The glacier was found by mining geologist Dr. J.P. Kimball, and in 1914 the first specimens were collected and shipped off to the U.S. Bureau of Entomology in order to be studied. The insects trapped in the ice have been extinct for more than 300 years, and scientists believe the locusts were migrating over the area when they were hit by a cold storm, consequently freezing them. Up until the late 20th century, the remains of the grasshoppers were actually quite common. But due to lower snowfall rates starting in the 1980s, hotter temperatures have caused higher melting rates for the glaciers, and most of the specimens trapped in the ice decompose before they're able to be retrieved. Getting to Grasshopper Glacier is no easy task because of the poor weather conditions in the area. The only way to get there is by use of an off-road vehicle, and then travelers are required to hike another several miles on foot to the glacier itself. There are also two other glaciers nearby with the same species of grasshoppers entombed in their ice. One of them is also called Grasshopper Glacier, while the other is simply known as Hopper Glacier. Interestingly, this phenomena isn't rare, and more of these glaciers can be found in Wyoming Shoshone National Forest and in the Crazy Mountains located north-northwest of the Beartooth Mountains. Number 6. Ancient plant brought back to life. In 2012, a team of Russian scientists managed to regenerate 32,000-year-old seed pods of several Silene stenophylla plants. The seeds had been buried near the banks of the Kolyma River by an Ice Age squirrel. They were discovered during a larger excavation of ancient ground squirrel hibernation burrows that were identified in Siberian ice deposits. The food supply belonging to these squirrels were trapped and preserved in these burrows, where scientists uncovered a wealth of biological evidence. Most of the mature seeds they found had been damaged, most likely by the squirrel that hid them in order to prevent them from germinating. However, some of the immature seeds still contained viable plant material. Silene stenophylla fruit specifically dates back around 32,000 years ago and were commonly seen throughout the Pleistocene epoch. The seed pods that were unearthed posed a difficult challenge for the team of researchers from the Russian Academy of Scientists. This was especially since the Judean date palm was previously the oldest regenerated plant, dating only roughly 2,000 years ago. The Russian team initially tried to use mature seeds from the plant's fruit pods, but unfortunately they wouldn't grow. Then, using cloning technology, as well as the placental tissue from several immature seeds, they were able to regenerate 36 plants from the ancient material. They noticed that when the plants matured and flowered, the petals were spaced apart further than the modern Silene stenophylla that still grows in the area. And surprisingly, the ancient plants were able to produce seeds that generated new plants an incredible 100% of the time, an even better rate than the modern variety. Scientists now believe that these 32,000-year-old plants may help to unlock more secrets hidden underneath the permafrost of Siberia. Number 5. Wolf pup frozen in ice. During the summer months of 2018, an 18,000-year-old pup was discovered buried underneath the Siberian permafrost. There was a long debate regarding whether the animal was a dog or a wolf, but in July of 2022, genomic sequencing was completed by the Center of Paleogenetics, which confirmed the pup's true identity. According to Dr. Dave Stanton from the Queen Mary University of London, the animal is most definitely a wolf that lived toward the end of the last ice age. Locals found the wolf pup, who has since been named Dogor, in a frozen chunk of ground near the Indigirka River. A lot of the animal is well preserved, including its nose, head, eyelashes, whiskers, and mouth, which proved that it still had its milk teeth when it passed away. Dogor was discovered to be male, and he was only 2 months old at the time of his death, but researchers don't know what caused the animal's untimely demise. Number 4. Century-old whiskey. In 2006, a team restoring a hut in the Antarctic discovered 5 crates full of Scotch whiskey and 2 crates of brandy that were dated to be at least 100 years old. The alcohol is said to have been used by Ernest Shackleton, a famous polar explorer. The bottles had been abandoned in the hut since 1909, and some of them were cracked by the ice. Team leader Al Fastier from the New Zealand Antarctic Heritage Trust said that they initially thought there were only 2 crates, but they were amazed to find 5 more. The crates were found under the floorboards of the Antarctic hut, but they were embedded too deeply in the ice to be dislodged easily. It was the New Zealanders who agreed to drill into the ice so they could try and retrieve some of the bottles. The bid to recover the whiskey was launched by the owner of White & McKay, a company that produces alcoholic beverages. They wanted to test samples of the alcohol in order to decide whether or not they could bring back the defunct spirit, originally made by distiller McKinley & Company. However, ice had formed inside some of the crates, making extracting the content extremely delicate. But the company believed that if the contents of the century-old bottles could be confirmed, extracted, and thoroughly analyzed, they may be able to replicate the original blend. In the end, this is exactly what they did. In 2013, they managed to recreate the long-lost recipe. However, the whiskey was returned to the newly renovated hut in Antarctica as part of a program dedicated to protecting the legacy of the era of the Antarctic exploration from between 1898 and 1915. Number 3. Indian jewels on Mont Blanc. On Mont Blanc, the highest mountain in Western Europe, a climber discovered a trove of precious jewels in 2016. The find was quite unexpected for the young French alpinist who was approaching the summit of the mountain at the time. It was there that he noticed a metal box poking out of the snow and ice on Bosson's glacier. Inside of it, he found hundreds of thousands of euros worth of rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. Researchers estimated that the box had lain hidden in that spot for roughly 50 years before it was discovered. There were about 100 precious stones in total inside the box, all neatly organized into separate sachets. Some of the bags were marked with "Made in India," making it clear that whoever these jewels belonged to must have been on board one of the 2 Air India flights that crashed in the region in 1950 and 1966, claiming the lives of over 100 people. The climber who found the box decided to turn it in to the local police after making his way down the mountain. This sparked a hunt for the original owner, or at least their living relatives. However, authorities could not locate the rightful owner, and so in 2021, the climber was allowed to keep half of the haul, equating to $84,350 or 75,000 euros. The rest of the precious stones were given to the Chamonix Crystal Museum in France, where the jewels will be put on display. Number 2. Greenland's perfectly preserved fossils. Frozen plant fossils were found by scientists in Greenland in 2017, perfectly preserved under a thick layer of ice. Scientists working for the U.S. Army drilled through a nearly half-mile of ice in northwestern Greenland in 1966. The team managed to pull up a 15-foot-long tube of dirt from the hole they had created, but that frozen sediment was placed in a freezer and forgotten about for decades. It wasn't rediscovered again until 2017. Then, in 2019, Andrew Christ from the University of Vermont made a shocking discovery when he analyzed some of these samples under his microscope. Instead of finding rock and sand, he saw leaves and twigs, suggesting that at one point in time, the ice of Greenland had thawed, allowing plants to grow. According to Christ, it's possible that there could have been an entire boreal forest standing in the same place that mile-long sheets of ice are today. Over the next year, Christ and the rest of his team studied the one-of-a-kind fossil plants from the bottom of Greenland. What they were able to prove through their research was that most, if not all of the country, had once been ice-free sometime in the last million years, maybe even in the last couple 100,000 years. Christ explained in a paper he published regarding their findings that ice sheets typically destroy everything in their path. But what his team discovered was perfectly preserved, delicate plant structures. He continued saying that they're definitely fossils, but they look as though they died yesterday. This new evidence helps to confirm a troubling new understanding that the ice in Greenland had previously melted off entirely throughout warm periods in the Earth's past history, periods similar to the one we're creating with human-caused climate change. Understanding this phenomena is vital to predicting how the landscape will respond to the warming climate in the future, as well as how quickly it will melt when that day comes. And at number 1, Otzi. In 1991, the remains of a frozen man were discovered by a couple who'd been hiking in the North Italian Alps. This amazing find came long before the prehistoric caveman that was found in the Himalayan mountains. The man was found at the edge of a lake situated almost 2 miles high in the Otzi Alps, close to the Austrian-Italian border. He was lying face down on the ice when 2 hikers, Erica and Helmut Simon, stumbled upon him in late September 1991. The upper part of his body was protruding from the ice at 10,499 feet in a gully in Tisenjak Pass, located on the Italian side of the border. The Simons reported what they found to the owner of a nearby mountain cabin, Marcus Perpemer, who then informed the authorities of the discovery. Initially, the importance of this find was not taken seriously by the scientific world, but after several researchers and archaeologists visited his body, a recovery mission began. Konrad Spindler, an archaeologist based in Innsbruck, Austria, noticed a copper axe close to the body and immediately understood that the remains had to be at least 4,000 years old. From then on, the glacial mummy became an immediate worldwide sensation. Since the initial discovery of the Iceman named Otzi by scientists, Every inch of him has been thoroughly analyzed, and they've dated him back to be 5,300 years old. They've been able to estimate what he may have sounded like, and that they identified the contents of his stomach. Scientists were also able to determine what ultimately killed him. Apparently, they now think that Otzi was shot in the back by an arrow while he was crossing the Tisanyak Pass. The ancient arrowhead was found lodged in the man's left shoulder in 2001. A cut on the mummy's right hand indicated that Otzi had engaged in some type of hand-to-hand combat, and that he didn't have a chance to heal before he died. He also had a wound on the back of his head, which they think occurred when he fell after being hit by the arrow. Otzi was naturally preserved by over 5,000 years of wind, sun, and freezing temperatures, and since he's been found, he's been the subject of numerous books and documentaries. Today, the Iceman is tended to by several researchers at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology, located in Bolzano, Italy. Otzi is currently kept in a custom cold chamber, which is maintained at a constant temperature of minus 21.2 degrees Fahrenheit. His remains are sprayed 4 or 5 times a year with sterile water to create a protective icy exoskeleton that will ensure that he stays a wet mummy. According to Oliver Peschel, a Munich-based forensic pathologist, Otzi is the best investigated human body the whole world has ever seen. Would you rather find a life-changing amount of gems and gold frozen in a glacier, or a fossil of a long-extinct animal that could change the course of science? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.